Okay, so welcome to another deep dive. Today we are going to be talking about tithing.
Yes.
And we're going to be looking specifically at a YouTube video
Okay.
called The Dark Truth About Tithing
Yeah.
that your church
Oh,
never tells you, from the Motivation Hub channel.
Interesting.
And, if you spent any time around churches or
Right.
charitable organizations, tithing is kind of this concept that
Yeah, it's almost like
it's thrown around a lot.
it's a given.
And usually when people think of tithing, they think of that
No.
10% benchmark.
8%, yeah.
Like give 10% of your income
Yeah.
and you'll unlock, financial blessings and divine favor and all that.
Yeah, it's like that's the
yeah.
kind of the framework I think that a lot of us have been given. You know,
Yeah.
kind of like this exchange, you give a tenth,
Right.
you receive back in abundance.
Exactly. Exactly. And so this video that we've been looking at
Okay.
is kind of shedding a different light on things.
Okay.
It's suggesting that there's maybe like a deeper truth about tithing that
Okay.
a lot of churches maybe don't talk about.
Interesting.
So in this deep dive, we're going to be looking at that perspective.
Okay. Sounds good.
And we're going to be pulling out the core ideas
Yeah.
of what the video creator
Right.
believes are the fundamental principles of giving.
I like it.
And right off the bat, the video starts out by saying that,
Okay.
this deeper truth about tithing could actually liberate you from what they're calling
Perspective.
financial manipulation.
Wow. Okay. So right off the bat, they're kind of making a pretty strong statement.
Yeah. So they start out by saying that in some cases,
Okay.
tithing has become like a tool of fear.
Okay.
Like it's
Right.
presented in a way
Yeah.
that if you don't tithe, you're going to be cursed or you're going to...
Yeah, so there's like a kind of a
Oh.
threat, almost like an undercurrent of threat.
Yeah. Almost like a threat. Almost like God's going to punish you. Or something bad is going to happen to you.
Right, like you're going to experience negative
Right.
financial consequences
Yeah.
or even like divine displeasure if you don't meet that 10% threshold.
Right. And so the video is kind of challenging.
Yeah.
This idea of God operating on this
Right.
really rigid contractual basis.
Yeah, does it really just like, do this, get this kind of situation?
Yeah, like a spiritual vending
Yeah,
machine.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you just put your money in
Yeah, put your 10% in
and blessings come out
and out pops your blessing.
automatically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so if it's not just about the money
Okay.
that you put in the offering plate,
Right.
then what does this video say is the real heart
Right.
and soul of tithing?
That's a great question.
What is it really about?
Well, yeah. What is it really about?
If it's not just about the money,
Yeah, according to this video, they're saying,
that the original intent
yeah,
behind tithing, wasn't so much about like the actual money
okay,
that was being contributed.
Good.
It was more about trust.
okay,
It was about putting God first in your life
yeah,
and acknowledging, the sorts of your provision.
right, and not out of a place of fear,
Right, exactly.
but out of a
Not like, oh, if I don't do this,
yeah,
then something bad's going to happen.
right,
But just out of a place of, recognizing
Right.
what you already have.
exactly, and so that's a really
Yeah.
big distinction that they make in the video
Okay.
because they contrast that original idea
Oh, right.
of, tithing being about trust
Mm-hmm.
with what they're saying is kind of a distortion.
Okay.
Where some churches are really focused on material prosperity as like a guaranteed outcome of tithing.
Interesting. So it's like they've kind of twisted
Yeah.
the original intent. Yeah. They even use this analogy in the video. They say, God is not a slot machine.
Wow. That's a
So I think
it's powerful analogy.
what they're trying to say is,
Yeah.
it's not like a predictable formula,
It's not just you put
Yeah.
X amount in and then Y amount comes out.
Right.
That's not a guaranteed return.
Yeah. It's not like if I put in 10%,
Right.
I'm guaranteed to get,
Right.
100% back or whatever.
Yeah. It's
Doesn't
not like a
hurt.
financial transaction like that.
Exactly. And so the video goes on to say that, things like genuine generosity, integrity, and a joyful attitude when you give
Yeah.
are actually more important
Yeah.
than just hitting that 10% number.
Interesting. So the focus is really shifting here.
Yeah, it's not about
From the external to the internal.
Yeah, it's not just about the amount.
Right.
It's about the heart behind it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The motivation. Right.
Behind it.
And they even say that, giving out of fear, like fear of punishment, is not what God intended.
Okay.
And they make this really interesting observation.
Okay.
And they say that, there are people out there who are very wealthy,
Right.
who don't tithe at all,
Okay.
but yet they're still very prosperous.
Interesting.
And they attribute this to,
Okay.
their good management of their resources.
So it's not just about the giving. It's also about, other things that contribute to financial well-being.
So it's not just about giving money to a church.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being a blessing to other people in need.
Right, being generous in other ways.
And so the video also makes this argument that,
right.
Financial increase isn't just a result of giving.
Mm-hmm.
It involves other things.
Okay, like what kinds of things?
Like things like financial wisdom.
Okay. Like actually understanding how to manage your money. Being diligent with the resources that you have.
Right.
Making investments.
Okay.
Being aware of opportunities and seizing them.
So it's not like this one-to-one relationship of giving and getting.
Exactly. It's not a guarantee.
Okay.
And so they talk about how there are people who are very faithful in their tithing.
Right.
But yet they still struggle financially.
Okay.
And so they're saying that maybe this isn't due to a lack of faith.
Okay.
But maybe it's due to a lack of financial literacy.
Okay.
Maybe they don't actually understand how to manage money.
So they're missing that key component of the equation.
And so they say that, God's plan isn't to manipulate people into giving.
Right.
But to help them understand stewardship.
Okay.
Like being responsible with all of your resources.
Mm-hmm. So not just giving, but understanding how to actually manage and steward your finances.
And so they're saying that, giving should be done with wisdom and with purpose.
Yeah.
And it should be focused on making a real impact and changing people's lives.
So it's not just about giving out of duty or apprehension. It's about actually understanding, what you're doing with your money.
Right.
And making sure it's actually making a difference.
So the video also talks about how, for a lot of people, tithing has become a burden.
Okay.
It's this heavy thing that they feel like they have to do.
Yeah.
And so how does the video contrast that with the original intent of tithing?
So they're saying that, originally tithing was meant to be an expression of honor.
Okay.
And a demonstration of trust.
Okay.
But over time, it's kind of been transformed into this rigid religious obligation that can really create a lot of, emotional and financial strain for
Right. And the video talks about how, people can feel guilty or anxious or even ashamed if they can't meet that 10% requirement.
If they're not able to that 10% consistently.
And they also talk about the historical context of tithing, and how it was originally meant to support the Levites, the priests, the poor, widows, orphans.
Right. So it was like a system of community care.
Yeah, it was about
and support.
Yeah, it was about taking care of the community.
Exactly.
Not just about funding a church.
It wasn't just about institutional funding.
Yeah.
It was about actually supporting the people in the community.
And so they contrast that with what they're saying is kind of a more modern mindset.
Okay.
Which is this transactional mindset of if you don't give 10%, you're robbing God.
Right. And that can lead to a lot of pressure and worry for people.
And so the video really goes after this, pay to bless mentality.
Okay.
They're saying that divine favor isn't something you can just buy. It's not something that's contingent.
It's not a commodity.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just buy God's favor.
And they make this point that, if this were true, if it was just a simple, give 10% and you're blessed, then everyone who tithes would be rich.
Everyone would be wealthy.
And everyone who doesn't tithe would be poor.
Right. But that's clearly not the case.
Which is not the reality that we see.
We see a lot of people who tithe who are still struggling financially.
And we see a lot of people who don't tithe who are doing very well.
Right. And they attribute that to, other factors like financial literacy.
Yeah. And they make this other point that, there are some people who are very successful who don't tithe at all, but they understand financial principles.
They understand how to manage money.
They know how to manage their money. They know how to invest.
Exactly.
And so they're saying that, the real driving force behind giving shouldn't be, fear or obligation.
Right.
It should be,
it should be from
a genuine desire to
find a place of wanting to, honor God and bless others.
And they also talk about this idea that, some people think that if you don't tithe,
right,
then God's going to be angry with you.
Right. Yeah.
What do they have to say about that?
So they're saying that, that's a misunderstanding of God's nature.
Okay.
That God isn't sitting up there tallying up. You know how much you've given.
Right.
And if you haven't given enough, he's going to be angry with you.
They're saying that, true giving should be an expression of joy. It shouldn't be a stressful thing.
It shouldn't be something you're doing.
It shouldn't be out of obligation.
Out of fear.
It should be out of a response to God's goodness.
Exactly. It should be a response to all the good things that you've received.
And the video also talks about how financial faithfulness extends beyond just tithing to a church.
Okay.
What does that look like?
So they're saying that, financial faithfulness can involve, helping the poor, supporting missions, contributing to community projects, just doing good.
Just being generally generous.
Right, exactly. And they're saying that, someone who might not tithe formally to a church, but is very generous in other ways, is not necessarily any less faithful.
Right. And they also talk about the pressure that some people feel who are already struggling financially to give even when they can't afford their basic needs.
Yeah. And they contrast that with the story of the widow's offering.
What do they say about that?
Yeah, so they're saying that, the widow's offering was an act of incredible trust and sacrifice. She gave everything that she had.
And they're saying that, it's not about meeting a specific requirement.
Yeah, it's not about
the dollar amount.
Yeah, it's about the heart.
It's about the heart.
And so they wrap up the video by talking about how financial wisdom and giving are really interconnected. How do they connect those two?
So they're saying that tithing isn't like this standalone magic bullet.
Okay.
It needs to be combined with understanding.
With self-discipline and with a genuine desire to honor God in all areas of your finances.
Okay.
So it's not just about giving money, it's also about managing your money well.
And they're saying that faith and integrity and giving with purpose are really what open the doors for blessing.
It's not just the money itself.
Right.
It's the principles behind it.
It's everything else that goes along with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they're really emphasizing the importance of financial wisdom. Things like budgeting, saving, investing. Those are just as crucial as giving.
And they make this comparison between people who might not tithe, but who are very financially literate, and people who do tithe, but maybe lack that understanding.
Yeah.
And they're saying, that's why some people struggle and some people don't.
Right. It's not just about the giving.
It's about the whole package.
The whole approach to your financial life.
The video also gets into some kind of potentially controversial topics about transparency and accountability in churches, regarding how they use the tithe money.
Yeah. So what kind of concerns?
Yeah. What kind of concerns do they bring up?
Or they raise it?
Yeah. What are their concerns?
So they're expressing concerns about the level of openness in some churches, about, how they're managing and spending the money that they receive from tithes.
And so they're questioning,
Right. So they're asking questions like, is the money being used to build fancy buildings or to support the lavish lifestyles of church leaders?
Was it actually being used to help people in need?
To help the community, to support the congregation.
And so they're pointing out this potential disparity, where you might see church leaders living in, very nice homes, driving expensive cars,
while their congregants are struggling.
While a lot of the people in their church are struggling to make ends meet. And so they're saying that, the purpose of tithing shouldn't be to enrich a few people.
It shouldn't be about making a few people wealthy.
It should be about helping everyone.
Right.
And so they're advocating for, more transparency, more accountability when it comes to church finances.
So they're saying churches should be more open about how they're using the money.
They should have clear financial reports that are accessible to everyone. And they're saying that.
And they're contrasting that with this focus on, collecting tithes, but not necessarily providing financial education to their members.
And so they're saying that,
Right. So they're saying true leadership involves accountability and transparency.
Right.
You know, being willing to be open about where the money's going.
And they're also saying that, tithing should be taught within a context of generosity and stewardship. It's not just about...
It's not just about giving money.
Yeah, it's not just about giving money.
It's about
using your resources wisely.
Yeah, it's about managing all of your resources wisely to empower the congregation.
Empower the community.
To help the community.
To actually make a difference.
So to kind of wrap up this deep dive, we've looked at this YouTube video, and it's presented some really interesting alternative perspectives on tithing, It's
kind of challenged the traditional...
Yeah, it's definitely a different way.
Yeah, it's a different way of thinking about it.
Of looking at it.
So what are some of the key takeaways?
So I think one of the biggest takeaways is this idea of shifting our focus from tithing being an obligation to tithing being an act of trust and prioritization.
Okay.
It's not just about hitting that 10% mark.
It's about the heart behind it.
The heart behind it.
And it's also about, understanding that generosity goes beyond just giving to a church.
Right. It's about impacting lives in your community.
It's about being a blessing to others.
Exactly.
In whatever way you can.
Yeah.
And I think another really big takeaway is the importance of financial wisdom and responsible stewardship.
It's not just about giving. It's also about managing your finances well.
Yeah, it's about being a good steward of all of your resources. And so... this video really suggests that true generosity goes beyond just, formal giving.
Right.
It's about having a compassionate heart and a commitment to making a positive difference.
To actually impacting the world around you.
So here's a final thought for you to consider.
I like it.
How might these principles, trust, financial wisdom, and impactful generosity, reshape your own perspective on giving?
How might this change the way you view giving and generosity?
And how could moving beyond, any feelings of obligation or fear and focusing on the real purpose and the impact of your giving lead to a deeper sense of stewardship and a more meaningful expression of generosity?
So it's about going deeper than just the surface level.
It's not just about the money.
Right.
It's about the heart.
It's about the why behind the giving.
So those are some things to think about.
Yeah, some good food for thought.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
That is deep dive.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.